Hello everyone, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk about chi mouths. This information isn't really well talked about in videos, so I think this is quite a worthwhile video. Basically what a chi mouth is the joining of two chi flows. Chi flows move downstream, either in rivers, roads, or even pathways, like a pathway through a park. A locked chi mouth is a chi mouth that has higher structures, and they can be natural or man-made, that restrict the flow of chi downstream. So it wants to flow downstream, but if it's locked, it collects. And that's key. Rivers that join make the highest quality chi mouths, and they're also called water mouths. And they are more potent if you can see that joining of the two rivers from your house or your apartment or condo. But they must be locked to perform as chi mouths. If they're not locked, they're just a river. Now, road junctions can also perform as chi mouths. And this is typically what most people actually have to use. They're in urban environments, even suburban environments. This may be the only thing you have, but they can be used anywhere there are no nearby rivers. Rivers meeting lakes and occasionally open spaces may also function as chi mouths. Now, a locked chi mouth can also be created by the presence of a bridge over a river. And I'm going to show you some examples of this, so don't be too worried. Now, the reason why the chi mouth, locking a chi mouth, is important is it allows chi to build up in the area right above the lock. That is a little bit upstream of that lock. And that is the energy you're tapping into if you have the right setup. Road junctions, the locking of a road junction is typically done by buildings at the corner of the intersection. And corner lots tend to be quite popular lots for businesses. So most of the time, if you have a intersection of two roads, even in the countryside, you have a decent chance of having a building there. It could be a gas station, anything that acts as a locking mechanism. Forests may also act as locks in rural areas. Open fields, not so much. An orchard can, and of course, if it has hills, it can also act as a lock. So there are two ways to analyze how a chi mouth may affect you. One is to look at the sanhe, and it basically is just treated like any sanhe method because you have a river. Now, in general, when we're looking at water, a water feature is more like a pond or a lake. A river, in general, is treated with sanhe methods, whereas a pond or a lake is treated through flying stars. The second method is something called qihong, and I have a separate video all about this. And this is a part of the 6 laws method of analyzing landforms. So the method that connects your main door to the chi mouth, and it has to be a locked chi mouth, that is going to be given in a separate video all about qihong. Again, a chi mouth is basically the joining of two chi flows. They differ in quality, but everyone who has a driveway or takes public transportation has one. I can almost 100% guarantee you have one. However, if you are living off the grid in a forest and the nearest road is over a mile or 2 away, you might not have a chi mouth. That is possible. Today, the most common form of a chi mouth is a road junction. River bends, if they're locked, can create seamouse, or locked seamouse really, but rivers meeting lakes can also create a locked seamouth because the lake itself locks it. And occasionally open spaces can function this way if they have buildings or hills surrounding that open space. Visible river conjunctions are the best form of a seamouth. It's also called a watermouth. But if you have that and you can tap into it, you're in a very good situation. All seamouths must be locked in order for them to have the ability to give you any kind of chi. Otherwise, the chi just goes downriver and you cannot receive it, even if there is a chi mouth there. Now, rivers and roads create chi by the movement downhill. I mean, there's energy involved in that movement, and that is what creates chi. The chi will continue to move downhill until it's blocked. And when it's blocked, it allows the chi to build up just upstream or uphill of the block. And generally, it'll be centered on the chi mouth when you have a locked chi mouth. Under the right conditions, the Chi Hung governs and Chi Hung will govern this. Your building or unit may be able to tap into this collected Chi. If the Chi mouth is not locked, the Chi just flows downriver and you cannot tap into it. So here's some examples of what we mean. This is a water mouth where two rivers meet and we're flowing from the right to the left. And these two hills act as locks. They keep the flow, and the chi doesn't just stay in the riverbed, it spreads out on both sides also. But it'll just keep moving down unless it's locked. And these can be mountains, they can be hills, they can be buildings. The taller the building, the better, and if it's 5 stories or more, that's really good. But even a single story house helps. Bridges over the river, especially downhill of the water mouth, they also act as locks. And if you're talking about roads, which I'll talk more about later, typically it's the buildings that will act as locks, but hills can do it too. So here's an example where you have a bridge. Of course, I'm assuming there's roads on each side of the bridge. It's not just all by itself, but this will act as a lock also. So when you have a lock, that allows chi to build up. And that chi tends to build up right over this water mouth or the chi mouth. If you have a bridge, even if there is no joining here, you will get a chi buildup on the upstream side of the river, or of the bridge, I'm sorry. But you can also sometimes have it still here. If this is closer than roughly a kilometer, so you're talking less, about a half mile. So if you actually were to stand just on this side and you could clearly see the bridge and it's not tiny, it may be okay. Now, a bridge that is basically at the same level as the two sides of the soil on each side, that is, it's not really tall and arched, it's more or less in line with the road, that actually creates a better lock than something that is really tall. And that's usually not needed unless the river has a tendency to flood tremendously. Now, if you had this condition and you had a flood and this bridge were to be washed out, you would lose the lock. just so that you understand that. So the way you use a chi mouth is you look for the nearest downstream or downhill chi mouth. You measure the direction, that is the subsector of the chi mouth, from the center of your house or your apartment or condo unit. And then you measure your main door's subsector also from the center of your house or apartment or condo unit. And then you use Qi Hong to see whether or not your main door is linked to the Qi mouth. And that's what my Qi Hong video is all about. And if the answer is yes, be happy. Now you can have this happen, and you can have a permanently good formation in your flying star charts or in your purple white chart. This doesn't disrupt this at all. You can have both, and then that's even a better house. If it's no, if you don't have that link, then depending on the conditions, you might wish to move your main door to be able to tap into that Qi mouth energy. But if you're in an apartment or a condo, you probably cannot. And if you're renting, you probably cannot. But if you own the house, you may be able to. However, there is an exception, and I do discuss that in the Qi Hong video. And again, you can see that for more details. So let's look at a more generalized picture. These two buildings will act as a lock. Even if they're single story, they still act as a lock. But it's only the buildings upstream from this locked Qi mouth will they receive, or at least possibly receive, the Qi that's collected here at the Qi mouth. The building or house facing is not relevant at all to the Qi Hong analysis. So that is a good thing. And it really just depends on, from the center of the house, where is the Qi mouth? And so each one of these buildings will have a different sector. Very likely will have a different sector for this Qi mouth. And if there's another building here, it's going to have a different one. That is half of it. The other half is, where is your main door located? Which sector, which subsector is your main door located, again, from the center of your house? These buildings here do not receive any Qi from this Qi mouth because they are downstream. If this is a lake, all these houses will receive the Qi, especially the houses on the same side of the lake as the river coming in. And usually lakes have more than one river coming in. And so most houses that are near a lake actually have a decent chance of receiving or having a Qi mouth they can use. The lake itself acts as a lock because this goes from flow to very little flow or very little movement of water in the lake. There is some movement, but it's very slow and very low compared to a river. So it automatically locks it, the lake itself. When we come to road Qi mouths, the one you want to look for is the nearest downhill road junction. If this is a roundabout, that's even better, because roundabouts tend to have an open space in the center and they make really good Qi mouths. But roundabouts aren't that common. Now, many rivers or many roads you can look at, and you can see which direction they're tilted. That is, they have enough of the tilt that you can see it. But a road can actually have a decent tilt and you can't tell. So there's two ways to do this. You can look at your local topography maps, if you can find them, but you can also just watch the flow of the water after a significant rain. And if you need to, you can even take a bucket of water and pour it at a kind of a medium speed. You don't want to just dump it, but pour it at a not too fast, not too slow speed, and it will flow down the road downhill. So you can tell which direction the water, which direction your road tilts to. Now, the direction of traffic is completely irrelevant to the chi flow. It is the direction based on the slope of the road that's important, not the direction of traffic. If you have a one-way road and they're going uphill, the chi flow is backwards compared to the traffic. And there's nothing wrong with that. Traffic has nothing to do with this. It has to do with landform. A junction must still be locked to be able to tap into this energy. And again, normally it is locked by buildings at the corner. So here's an example. So it's pretty clear when we're talking about A. Now these are places that either have no driveways or they have their houses with on-street parking. And this is the nearest road junction that is lower. So this is the highest. These are higher than the lowest, but they're lower than the highest. So they're in between. And this is the nearest lower junction for building A. That's pretty clear. For building C, this is also quite clear. For building B, this is a little bit iffy. It actually may be able to tap into either this corner or this corner. The reason why it might be able to tap into this corner is because when we look at chi flow, if we just start with water here, it's going to flow both this way and it's going to flow this way. But this passes in front of the main door or in front of the facing direction of the building. I mean, here you may take a little bit of that into account. And it would flow here. And so this could be B's, but this is closer. So I would say you probably use this one, especially if the main door was located on the left side of this building, then it's definitely this one. It's closer, and it also, the chi would pass right in front of the house or the building. I would say this is definitely for B if the main door was here. If it's here, it might be either one. And you can actually see if one works and the other one doesn't with the Chi Hong method, I would say you're still good. Now for a building on a corner where this is not rectangular but square, if this were square, then it's definitely you would be using, for example, this one under these conditions if this were square, not a rectangle. Now, if there is no locking, let's say one of these buildings were missing, then but you had buildings, let's say this one was missing. And because maybe they took down this building, they're going to build another building later, but in the meantime, maybe there'll be a building here, there's a building up here. This open space, as long as it has these two buildings beside it that can act as a lock, this could become the chi mouth. And in that case, if it were just like this, I would no longer consider this to be the chi mouth for building B. I would turn back to this one. And that's because I'm assuming there are other houses here. I'm just not showing it, not to clutter up the image too much. So it takes a little bit of common sense and a little bit of understanding how chi works to be able to determine exactly which chi mouth you use in a situation like this. But if you're anywhere in the middle of the road, you just look for the lower one. You know, in the middle of the two intersections, you're just looking for the lower one, and then it's pretty easy. The corner ones are a little more tricky. If you're in the countryside, hills, forest, or orchards can act as locks. Open fields where, let's say, corn or wheat or something like that is grown, and that's not very high. In general, those cannot act as good locks because they're just not strong enough. And it's not actually unusual for them to be a bit lower than the road because then they collect water, which is usually a good thing for most farmers. So it doesn't necessarily work. Now, there's another way you can do this. If you do have a driveway, or if you live in an apartment or a condo and there's a main entrance for the parking area for the apartment, then that it can also act, that entrance of the driveway to the road can act as a chi mouth if the connection to the road is on the downhill side. Now, this is just a kind of a general thing. High-density roads, of course, tend to be disruptive for residents, but they're good for businesses. And you can use the chi mouth, and all these ideas that I talk about here can also be used for businesses. You just want to have a higher level of chi in general because businesses need more chi. So here's an example with driveways. For building A, you can say that, yes, this is, because this is the lower side, this can be a chi mouth for building A. Now, this doesn't have to be a garage. This can be a carport, or it can just be a space to park the car without anything overhead. For building B, this is not a chi mouth because it is higher than the main door. So this has to be the chi mouth. That's pretty simple. And for an open space, basically you want to have it open out in front of the building. Theoretically, it might also be able to be behind. But if you have buildings on each side, it's either going to have to be in front or behind. And this really acts only as a chi mouth for building B. The rest of these buildings on this road would use this location for the chi mouth. Now, it's better if this is a park-like setting and not just a vacant lot, because vacant lots people tend to dump stuff in there and they get ugly and they're not well kept usually. So if it's a park, it's very good. Building A, these two buildings right beside this might be able to use this. But in general, this is the one that we clearly can use it. And I wouldn't say that these, unless they had the main door facing the open area, I don't think you would use this as a chi mouth for them. But they have this one. Again, it's the relationship between the main door and the chi mouth subsectors. And you measure both from the center of the building or the unit. And that's key to the interpretation. And if you watch my Chi Hung video, I make this pretty easy. So that's basically it. I'd like to thank you for watching. Please feel free to contact me here if you have any questions or visit my ad-free website. And if you subscribe, I do have some monthly videos, so it could be worth it. But at any rate, I would like to thank you for watching.